Welcome to Wrasslin Raw! All right, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Raw became war and Attitude ruled. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico. Crush is hurt! Crush is hurt! I can't get any harder, my God.
Yeah.
Joe Giammatteo.
The Cobra Clutch?
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett. We're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw is War at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on November 24th, 1997. This Raw was recorded at the Cumberland County Memorial Auditorium in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and features Jim Ross, Jim Cornette, and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then, let's get into it. We kick this off with handsome Harvey Whippleman coming to the ring, downtown Bruno, goddamn, to cartoony stripper music, wearing a gray suit and carrying a briefcase. This was a straight-up mockery of Rick Rude. As Harvey introduced D-Generation X, and we got that DX entrance video, there was actually kind of some positive crowd noise there that I heard. People sounded like they were starting to get excited about DX. Something that I wasn't excited about, though, is the way that they're editing the entrance into video clips to the beat of the music. That description might not sound that intuitive, but just imagine, a camera switching between three different things to the beat of Break It Down. It's kind of seizure-inducing. You go between the strippers on the pole to Shawn Michaels walking down the entryway to some kind of, red light district to China crotch chopping. It's just,
You know what they're going for.
seizures.
Extreme. that 90s extreme spelled with an X. That's
Yeah.
the look they're going for here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you said seizure inducing because I have noted that this is obviously where Kevin Dunn became obsessed with seizure inducing quick camera cuts.
Yes. And, we're going to go just a touch off script here. Fucking unbearable. One of the biggest reasons why I cannot watch modern wrestling are the fucking quick camera cuts. I hate them.
Well, he did step down, so maybe they'll change.
Maybe we'll have slow cuts from
Yeah.
now on.
Oh, thank goodness. I could actually maybe see. Well, that's the drawback, though, is whenever you actually are able to see the moves landing, you can see how shittily they're executed. If they're not being hidden by all these quick cuts. All right, well, I digress. Let's get back to something that is a little more entertaining than the modern product. Again, in my opinion. Shawn Michaels kicked this off by saying, "Welp, that was a tough spot to fill," and kicking Harvey out of the ring. And I popped.
Yeah.
I mean, that was good. That was solid. Shawn did end up kind of losing me, though. He started talking about Bret Hart. Shawn took responsibility for the screw job and then stated that Bret's contract with the WWF was still in effect until November 30th. And it kept getting weirder from there, with Shawn saying that Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels are going to have a match here in the ring tonight. And with Harvey Whippleman there, I had to assume that there's going to be some kind of imposter or impostore or something. Some kind of maybe bait and switch. And that's it. That's it for this. As much as Shawn drew out this announcement, this segment was actually pretty short in terms of actual content. Ryan, what'd you think of this angle that DX was cooking up to start the show?
Well, I will say I loved Harvey Whippleman coming out and acting like Rick Rude here. I thought he did a really good job with the whole shtick, introducing DX. And then when DX came out, I know we've talked about their music before, and this is a comment on the music, not necessarily the quick cut video they did tonight, but it really sticks out as to how modern the DX song sounds compared to everyone else. It sounds like everyone else's entrance music is stuck in the 80s, and theirs sounds like it's going into the new millennium. It seems like there's a stark difference there.
Yeah.
Harvey's music was really modern.
I also thought it was a good idea, what Shawn said to Harvey here, just saying, oh, that was a hard role to fill, and then pushing him out. Like, you know what? Fuck off, Rick Rude. You want to go to WCW? Nobody cares. It doesn't matter, because he didn't have much to do with DX. He was an add-on, and from Joe's reporting, we know that is the case, and it came off that way, that he was an add-on. So, good riddance to him. But Shawn does start to go a little bit long, and, I don't know if this is just because we know in hindsight that there's no way Bret Hart was coming back, but, maybe if, we weren't fans that spent time on the internet and were just teenagers back then, maybe we believed that Bret Hart was going to come and show up tonight. But me now, as a 40-something-year-old man, I kind of had a feeling something was up their sleeve, and unfortunately, I correctly guessed what it would be in my head when we got there. I'm not going to spoil it now, but I did correctly guess what that was, so that's sad.
I have, I guess, mostly good things to say about the start to this show. I did also like Handsome Harvey and his Rick Rude impression. I thought it came off as pretty funny. That was the whole purpose of it. This is the week after Rick Rude shows up on both Nitro and Raw, so this is their response to that, and I thought it was pretty funny. Hopefully they will be done with that, because they are not done talking about Bret Hart. This is the third Raw after Survivor Series. Is that right?
I think so.
It's coming off as like very sour grapes for me at this point. Like, this guy is fucking gone. He's in another promotion.
Nothing shows you're over your ex more than continuously talking about them.
Right. And this is the show where it officially gets there for me. And obviously there's more later, but yeah, I think it's sour grapes. And I think they should talk about, maybe Shawn should be cutting promos on Ken Shamrock or whoever his next opponent is. But I guess a few other good things. I love how thick the New York accent is on the DX song. I've always loved that. Chyna holding the belts in the ring is badass. I love that. And I have to say, I think Shawn Michaels, he cut a pretty good promo here. It was a fake apology to Bret Hart that came off as a little bit real, I guess, if you place yourself back into this time period. It maybe came off as real, but it's obviously a fake apology. So I think he delivered it pretty well.
Yeah, I agree with that, Joe. And I also agree with what you said about Bret Hart and sour grapes. Like, any other time we're so ready to move forward, any other time we are so ready to ignore that the competition exists, why can't we just do that here? Like, for real. There's so many good stories that they come up with too. It almost feels like they're holding themselves back by keeping DX locked in this Bret topic,
Vince McMahon feels he's been wronged, and he wants to do all he can to get revenge.
I don't know about being wronged. He clearly stated to all of us that Bret screwed Bret.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Vince McMahon feels he was wronged in this situation.
Well, I mean, he does carry with him that sense of superiority that, as a 52-year-old man who had not been holding back, he probably could have held his own.
Oh, he just would have murdered Bret if he wasn't holding back. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, speaking of murdering things, let's go to our first match of the night. Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg defeat the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, by pinfall in 9 minutes and 23 seconds to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. I was taken aback by this, doing my research and preparing for this episode. Not only did LOD lose the championship, they do it as the first match on Raw. I mean, we've joked around about the tag team championships being second rate, bottom tier, whatever you want to call it, but like murdered before our very eyes on the screens here. Billy and Rhodey came out to their New Age Outlaw music, so that was cool. It was also so loud that you couldn't hear a good chunk of what Road Dogg was saying. I did hear him say the word dinosaurs in reference to LOD, so there was that.
And oh, what a flush.
Commentary informed us that LOD didn't want to wait until the pay-per-view to have this championship match. I'm not sure what the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn did to get up into like the upper echelon of the championship scene, but whatever, maybe breaking those hats did it.
And I wonder if Joe has any news on LOD's status moving forward during the news, because that's what I came away, watching this was like, is this the last we're going to see of them?
Yeah, I was wondering about the health of Hawk specifically in this, so I also thought it was very weird that Vince apparently okayed giving away a championship match for free. I mean, that's the real tell right there that the fucking tag belts don't matter. Things got even fuckier when JR was putting over the upcoming ECW pay-per-view. I didn't even realize that was still a thing that we were doing here. I suppose endorsing the third-party candidate to draw all the votes away from WCW is maybe a strategy, but whatever. We broke to commercial with not much going on and came back to the same, and the finish, for me at least, was even worse than the match. There was a chair shot, a downed ref, a different ref running in to make a delayed count, and by the time this was over, I was questioning just what kind of episode this was going to be. I had no reason or even opportunity to anticipate this match and therefore had no reason to give a shit. The tag titles have been passed on down the line once again. Ryan, do you have a better outlook on this than I did, maybe?
I maybe didn't hate it as much as you, but I still didn't love it, that's for sure. I did like hearing the New Age Outlaws come out to the New Age Outlaws music, and we get the familiar start, the "oh, you didn't know" start. We got that, but not the rest of the Road Dogg spiel here, whatever you want to call it. So that was a little exciting. And some of the wrestling wasn't all that bad. I think, as I've stated before, that the Outlaws are starting to come into that just, really hateable heel territory. They're just cheating and slime balling their way through this match to ultimately come up with a surprise defeat and, becoming the new tag team champs. But it just didn't feel earned and it felt rushed. This didn't feel like a title match at all. The match itself wasn't bad, just not up to the standards of what you want in an actual title match is where I think it fell apart for me. So I didn't think it was terrible, just not deserving of a match for a belt.
And for the first time ever, a new referee came in and made a count. Instead of just allowing the original referee to just lay there lifeless. So it's surprising to me sometimes to see around this time period how they will just slap a belt or belts on somebody like way before they're ready. To me, the New Age Outlaws, they're not even called the New Age Outlaws yet. And they're still working into form. You guys mentioned how Road Dogg isn't really fully settled in with what he's, saying on the mic on the way to the ring, like he will be. So it's surprising to me how they were so quick to put the belts on people. They've done it with the Intercontinental belt too. Ever since Razor left, they kind of have thrown it on people. So that's pretty shocking because nowadays, like modern wrestling, they play hot potato quite a bit. But there's a lot of times where a guy is getting over and the fans are just clamoring for them to put a belt on the guy and they just don't do it. But back here during this time period, they're just fucking slapping these tag belts on on every team. The Godwins, the Headbangers, LOD, New Age Outlaws. It's just a little surprising.
And with zero buildup.
Well, yeah, and that's what it is. It seems like the tag team and the IC belt are being used as the rocket to try and get people up instead of putting established people who are already up, giving them the belt as kind of a reward.
They're not really giving the fans that moment.
Right. Yeah. They're trying to use the belt to push the people instead of the people already being up and giving them the belt because of that.
Right. So that's what's happening here. And I think the finish was pretty good. I did enjoy the finish. We're going to talk about what happened after the match. But, even though the Outlaws aren't officially the Outlaws yet, and I mean, they are the future and they will be a staple pretty much every week moving forward on Raw. So I guess if I was cheating, I would be okay with this because they're going to be, a big part of the show moving forward. So I think it was a good move.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean to be disparaging, but it's really easy to say that when there's virtually no competition in the tag scene at all. It's a good move to put it on them, absolutely, because they're the young up-and-comers, but what other options were there?
They're
really?
The only new flashy toy right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ryan, I just have to say, I absolutely love what you said about the man pushing the belt as opposed to the belt pushing the man. I can't wait for us. And we've got a little bit of that with Austin and The Rock with the IC title right now, and we'll get into some of that later on. But it's nice it feels like with that at least, and with the championship, now that we're beyond the pissing contest between Shawn and Brett, or at least it's in real life we are, maybe not in these angles, but
right.
Maybe we can get back, or we're starting to get back to that point of the man pushing the belt. So, Joe, you said some stuff happened, and some events did happen after the match, and I thought they were infinitely more entertaining than the match itself. First up, the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn. Whenever they won the titles, they ran straight out of the arena like Earl Hebner up in fucking Canada without stopping. Into the parking lot and into a waiting Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. They almost, and as they were like peeling out of the parking spot, they almost ran into a big stretch limo that was pulling in, and that gave me a good nostalgia pop, because that's the kind of thing. I mean, it's doesn't really matter here in this episode, but in the future, the limo pulling in is going to be a big deal. Anytime there's a limo pulling in, somebody is going to step out of it that's going to make me pop. So I like that they're cluing into the fact that that's going to be a good way to move forward. Meanwhile, back in the ring, I guess LOD just started demolishing security officials in what amounted to a giant tantrum. We got some pretty good footage of at least two getting smeared out there. That was a good time. And we got an additional view of that limousine. And here JR speculated that must be Bret Hart in that limo. After that, we had a video package highlighting the recent conflict between Sergeant Slaughter and Triple H. And I guess the best way that we should do that is to start at the beginning, back in the fucking 80s. And have Michael Cole do the voiceover as they recapped Slaughter's career, conveniently leaving out the Iraqi turncoat phase, I might add. But when that was over, back in the arena, Michael Cole was at the top of the ramp to interview Slaughter, who came out to Lex Luger's old music, the Stars and Stripes. Triple H won't be fighting Commissioner Slaughter, he'll be fighting Sergeant Slaughter, who literally changed character before our eyes with the simple addition of a hat and the lowering of his voice.
It's like a switch.
Yeah. Slaughter informed us of what is apparently a time-honored tradition in the military, challenging your rivals to what's called a boot camp match. Any of our military listeners want to chime in on how many boot camp matches they've witnessed or participated in their military careers, I'd appreciate that. Slaughter then goes off on a litany of have you evers, which I thought was kind of lame until it went fully off the rails with have you ever played Russian roulette? Have you ever watched anybody die? Have you ever killed anyone with your bare hands?
Have you ever seen the movie The Deer Hunter?
Yeah.
Slaughter winds things up by saying he's going to murder Triple H, and that was to the tune of Stars and Stripes forever.
That's the type of authority figure we all want.
That's right.
So I did not like this segment. I was... And just in terms of the overall show, I was getting a little irritated at this point. So, Joe, what did you think of the aftermath of the championship match, as well as Slaughter's change in character here?
Well, the aftermath of the tag team match, I loved. I loved seeing those two guys peeling out in that Oldsmobile. I thought that was hilarious. And then you get the limo, the stretch limo, and that's going to make people stay tuned in, and that's what you want. So that was nice. I like JR's quote of "They left left like they were bank robbers after those guys peeled out. So yeah, that was very well done. Now the Sergeant Slaughter promo, for some reason, it's kind of something I noticed, like I noticed before here earlier in the show. This is an late 70s, 80s type thing, right? When Sergeant Slaughter was Sergeant Slaughter.
Yeah.
These 90s fans, these 1997 fans don't really seem to latch on to that 80s nostalgia. Not like fans do now. When fans now see that The Undertaker or Stone Cold Steve Austin is going to be on Raw, they love it. But these 90s fans, they don't really... this place was fucking silent during his little transformation into Sergeant Slaughter. So, I don't know. It missed for me. And then, I'm not going to repeat those things that you said because it's not really worth the time. But those were just ridiculous. Those things he was saying. And then I knew it was going in the direction of, oh, we're going to get some fucking no DQ or some no holds barred thing. And it's a boot camp match, whatever the fuck that is. So
clearly you are not in the military.
Yeah.
It's a pretty closely guarded tradition.
I'm already sort of not looking forward to it, but I will give it a chance.
So again, starting with the New Age Outlaws running out like bank robbers, that was a great scene. The only thing that could have made it better is if that Oldsmobile was that beautiful 90s Oldsmobile turquoise that like every other Oldsmobile was back in the 90s. That's the only thing that could have made it better. I did love, though, Animal and Hawk completely abusing that yellow-shirted jobber posing as a security guard. They give him the doomsday device and just fucking murder him. That was good. Then we get the Sergeant Slaughter video, and, in the middle of this video, I started to regret what I said last week about being excited about seeing Sergeant Slaughter in the ring, because
I knew it.
That was definitely some rose-colored glasses, because even showing him back in his prime, it wasn't that good. It was really slow and kind of someone that, we would be making fun of if we would have saw him wrestling in our watching, that's for sure. But once he starts talking to Michael Cole, there were a few things I popped over. That was when Sergeant Slaughter said the words Cobra Clutch, and Joe, you said it at the beginning. Michael Cole comes back with the most ridiculous looking surprised face saying the Cobra Clutch, and then Slaughter immediately barks at him. Who gave you permission to speak? Just that part was good, but then we learn it's a boot camp match. Okay, there's the nostalgia, and like you said, it's not really hitting with these 90 fans. And I think the reason why is these fans are basically us. We're the teenagers, early men of that time. That's their core audience right then, and we were teenagers, right? We were trying to get away from our youth. So I think seeing someone like Slaughter, we're like, that's the guy I cheered for when I was like 6 and 7. I'm looking to move on from that cartoony guy. So I think that's why people just didn't give a shit. Then he goes off into fucking flashback territory talking about murdering people with his bare hands. And I was like, where the fuck is this going? Not the best work here out of Slaughter. And I am now officially not excited for this upcoming match.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Probably the single worst thing they could have done to this authority figure.
Yeah.
He was doing great as a straight-laced, or relatively straight-laced commissioner, laying down some rules, adding some last-minute stipulations to fuck with people. He was doing really good in that role. He was believable in that role. And like a fucking switch getting flipped, he went from believable to not believable at all with the donning of a fucking hat.
So you're saying he was unbelievable.
Yeah. God, almost in the biblical sense. Just, it's so fucking terrible. Terrible. I'm sorry. I didn't think much of this episode, so I'll try not to dwell on that as we move forward. Maybe we'll have a chance to get up with our next match. Brian Christopher with Jerry Lawler defeats Flanagan by pinfall in 3 minutes and 30 seconds in a WWF Light Heavyweight title tournament quarterfinal match. And by God, Flanagan is our jobber of the week. Take it, Ryan.
Thank you, Bartlett. Yes, Flanagan is our jobber of the week. Flanagan was born Christopher Kindred in Indianapolis, Indiana on April 6th, 1974. I could not find a trainer or an exact debut date, but Flanagan made his debut sometime in 1992. He has used the ring names Cobain / Venom, Gregor Falcon, Flash Flanagan, and Flanagan. There's not a ton of information about Flanagan's early stuff, but I did find while wrestling in the indies during the mid-90s, he formed a tag team called the Black Sheep with one of Wrasslin Raw's favorites, Wolfie D.
Oh, great.
They had minimal success.
Understandable.
This is one of 4 matches Flanagan had with the WWF, so clearly not a regular that we're talking about here. This is his only match on Raw. The other 3 matches didn't take place until 1999, and all 3 were for Shotgun Saturday Night. So big shock here. He was defeated in all 4 of the
I was going to ask, is he 0 for 4?
Yeah. From 99 to 2002, he was signed to a developmental deal with the WWF, but nothing really ever came of it other than the 3 other jobs that he did in Shotgun Saturday Night in 99. That's really the only time he shows up on television during those 3 years. After his release from the WWF, Flanagan joined TNA for the next few years, reuniting with old tag team partner Wolfie D, forming the Disciples of the New Church.
Oh my God.
I mean, of all of the faction names to rip off, you pick the fucking Honey Dippers. Unbelievable.
You said this was in TNA?
Yes, this was in TNA, and yeah. In 2005, Flanagan went to Puerto Rico for a couple years and wrestled for IWA. While there as a singles wrestler, he won the IWA World Heavyweight, Intercontinental, and Hardcore Championships, as well as capturing the IWA Tag Team belts with Sasquatch himself, Miguel Perez.
Oh.
Okay.
After leaving IWA, Flanagan returned to the States and independent promotions around Indiana until joining OVW in 2012. This would be after OVW was no longer a developmental promotion for the WWF WWE. He would wrestle at OVW for 2 years and became the OVW Triple Crown winner on August 3rd, 2013, holding the OVW Heavyweight, Television, and Tag Team Champions all at the same time. Flanagan would again return to the Indies in 2015, where he could still be found wrestling in the Illinois-Indiana area. His last match as of recording was a DQ loss to Glenn Williams and Sean Vincent on October 14th, 2023 at the Bella Claire Fairgrounds in Belleville, Illinois. Christopher Kindred, a.k.a. Flanagan's current record is 650 wins, 537 losses, and 80 draws.
Ooh.
So, someday things will pick up for Flanagan, but in the WWF in November of 97, Flanagan was just a jobber helping fill out an 8-man tournament made for 2, making him our jobber of the week.
Wow. I apologize to our listeners in Puerto Rico, but the IWA is clearly hot garbage if this guy held every title there.
Wow.
With Sasquatch Perez. I mean, he had a little bit of a sponsor there.
He did.
Yeah.
Really, the most shocking thing about your report that I heard was that he didn't have a trainer.
Well, I mean,
I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I couldn't find who his trainer was.
The joke is that he's terrible. He's fucking terrible. Flanagan. I do love the name, though. I do love the name, though, and I have no idea how you get from Kindred to Flanagan.
It seems like everywhere else, he went by the name Flash Flanagan, and we only cut that off because it being so close to Flash Funk.
He's flashy. He's Flanagan.
But everywhere else, everything called him Flash Flanagan, and I never seen him just called Flanagan.
They missed a perfect especially with Cobain as a former ring name. They missed a perfect opportunity for him to come out in flannel Flanagan,
or a dress.
The answer to Flash Funk, the Seattle answer in the 90s. All right. So I was glad we went to tournament brackets to get an update because we completely missed Flanagan doing a suicide dive over the top rope to jumpstart things. There was a sunset flip over the ropes that might have been neat to see if it hadn't been performed opposite the hard camera to the floor so that we didn't see any of it at all. And that's all I have. This episode was 0 for 4 for me, much like Flanagan's run in the WWF in segments so far. Joe, what'd you think of this match, please?
Yeah, I just wrote down that Christopher wins and that there's nothing memorable here.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, I don't have too much more to add. Christopher wins.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, your Flanagan report was infinitely more entertaining than this match was, and consider that your performance review for the quarter.
Well, thank you. I will take it.
All right. So believe it or not, guys, that piss poor match we just had was the final segment of the first hour of Raw. That's what they were lining up to keep us hanging on for the second hour. And the second hour kicked off with Degeneration X again, with that same frenetic seizure-inducing editing. I'm looking forward to us not having that. It'll be probably about another month or so, but it was being teased that we would be getting a monumental moment with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels here. All I could see coming was the bait and switch. Ryan, I was not as on top of things like you were. I didn't see it coming. In hindsight, I should have.
It's almost 90% if they're going to swerve us.
Yeah.
This is what they're going to swerve us with.
I mean, like I said, I really should have seen it, but I was just, trying to roll with it. Triple H did make a dick joke here that was kind of entertaining, referring to a purple helmet. So there's that. Shawn ended up announcing out Bret Hart, and guess what we got? A fucking midget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This turned into a performance piece with Triple H narrating on the microphone and Shawn and the midget reenacting the finish to their match at Survivor Series. The midget obviously playing Bret Hart's role. He had a really not quite as uncanny valley as the macho midget, but still a pretty disturbing mask that he was wearing to portray Bret Hart. They ended up putting a WCW sign on the midget's ass and kicking him out of the ring. He finally got the hell out of there. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Jim the fucking Anvil Neidhart came out. Yeah. And basically, he ripped off everything Bret had been saying for months. He managed to rip off like 4 months of story in 4 poorly delivered lines. Shawn tried to talk the Anvil around into hating the Harts. After all, the Harts did leave the Anvil alone in the WWF. They went down the roster. Davey Boy, he has one of those common knee injuries that Shawn knows all about. Owen, he's at home with some kind of PTSD or emotional disturbance following the screw job. And that just leaves the Anvil, Pillman, obviously. But, there's membership in Degeneration X for the Anvil. Again, anticipating the bait and switch. Anvil had originally showed up to fight, but he ended up leaving to quietly consider working with the people that just 10 minutes ago had been ruining the Anvil's fucking life. So Shawn made a very good argument here, I guess. After that, we had footage of the winner of the Survivor Series Super Supper Sweepstakes. All joking aside, I mean, that did look like that probably would have been fun as hell.
Oh, hell yeah.
Pounding beers with Stone Cold at the local restaurant. I mean, that looked fucking awesome. I'm not going to lie.
Yep.
And that wraps up this segment. Midgets and Jim Neidhart. Need I say more? Ryan, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, we start with Triple H dropping a promo on the military. I thought that was kind of funny. And then that leads into the mini Bret Hart. And yeah, sadly, I called it in my head, and I hate that I was correct. The mask definitely brought me back to the Macho Man rubber mask. As you said, maybe not quite as terrifying, but it was getting there. Then we get to the reenactment of Survivor Series with Triple H commentary. And, the only thing I can think of, and I guess, maybe this is putting a positive spin on it, because maybe that's what they were going for. But the fact that you had Shawn Michaels putting this midget in the sharpshooter, it kind of reminded me of those medieval street jester comedy acts.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was kind of when it came off to me, and maybe that's what they were going for. And I got a little bit of a laugh out of it because that's what it looked like. But then they attached the WCW placard to his ass and send him on his way. But definitely lost my attention once the fucking Anvil came out, though. I could understand how it fits, with the story here and what they just did, but who there really thought they were going to get any type of quality program match or anything out of involving the Anvil here? So I was disappointed in that, and I was also disappointed at the very end. We see the Anvil as he contemplates joining DX, stroking that fucking goatee that he has no business still having.
Yeah.
Yep.
Correct. Yeah, so this started the second hour, which every time they start the second hour, they have the Raw theme song. And I noticed that this is a new song for the second hour, and the video is awesome. It features a lot of Kane, Hellfire and Brimstone, and I really like it. So looking forward to seeing more of that. The DX stuff here, it's Vince's fetish with midgets. Not surprising to see it. Once again, we have more Bret Hart, more of the guy who is no longer in the promotion. This is 3 weeks out now, and we're still going on with it. And the Anvil just looked like a complete sellout little bitch in this entire segment. And it was terrible. And everything he said just did not look genuine at all. And it was horrible.
Yep.
Shawn offering Jim, the Anvil, to join DX, it made me think of, it's really a sort of they're really going in on the DX being the NWO to me, because this is a gimmick that was kind of stolen from the NWO because they were always trying to get guys to join. Probably the most popular one was the Diamond Dallas Page, when they tried to get him to join, and then he gave the diamond cutter to Scott Hall and Kevin Nash and ripped off the NWO shirt to get a big crowd pop. It kind of reminded me of that. But this is Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and nobody gives a shit about him.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to suspend my disbelief if the situation sets it up. If you set it up the right way, I will happily believe anything you put in front of me. They didn't set this up the right way. And I believed nothing about Jim being there other than he's hitting the pay window.
Yes, sir.
I guarantee you, he said something along the lines of, "You fucked over my family. Let me hit the pay window one more time before
Let me get a little extra sauce for my ribs."
Yeah. A little extra cheese for that Whopper.
Yeah. All right. So let's get the hell away from that. Let's go into our next match. Ken Shamrock defeats Savio Vega with Miguel Sasquatch Perez by submission in 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Savio Vega he really feels like he's just out there flapping in the wind with no real direction. And I know he's got Los Boricuas. That's slowly going off of our radar. I don't know what else to say about it. It sucks because Savio is a hell of a wrestler. We're going to see it here in this match, a good chunk of it at least. And Savio can do great things in the ring, but Savio doesn't exactly fit in a world where we can only have 4 fucking matches in a 2-hour episode of Raw, which is what we had here tonight. So for the first time in this episode, I was excited going into a match. I really wanted to see what kind of a match Savio Vega and Ken Shamrock would have together. And at the start, at least, I was not disappointed. Ken did this fantastic reversal of rope work. I don't even know what to call it, but it reminded me of one of Sub-Zero's combos from Mortal Kombat 2. The slide up kick that transitions into a pinwheel kick. It's down forward X. Anybody that played Mortal Kombat 2, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Ken fucking nailed this sequence of hits, and it looked amazing. He did fantastic working it. Savio did amazing selling it. So, that was great to see. Savio, no slouch. He was able to match Ken's speed and intensity. This is somebody that physically is not up to, the gassed up freak level that Ken is, obviously, but still he was able to hang. Savio was in there with Shamrock hanging, and that was amazing. But then Sasquatch Perez came out and interfered. He was beating on Shamrock at the outside while Savio had referee Earl Hebner, no fucking surprise, distracted. That was the turning point for me. This is another one of those matches that kind of came in 2 parts, and the second part dialed things down quite a bit. Savio ended up pulling out some Quang arm gestures while he was standing over Shamrock. That was about the only notable thing about the second half. And even Shamrock snapping wasn't enough to bring me back. When this finished with more Sasquatch interference that ultimately didn't pan out, I was back to just the general feeling of apathy that I had started the match with. Ryan, please, what did you think of this match?
After the last couple weeks where we kind of forgot about Los Boricuas matches and we saw Savio coming out alone, I got an inkling of hope that maybe we were just going to forget about the rest of the faction and Savio was just going to go back to being a singles guy. Sadly, Miguel Perez proved me wrong. He comes down and attacks Shamrock about halfway through the match, but before that, I completely agree. I thought Shamrock and Savio looked really good together in the first half before things slowed down. And I have to say, I'm really impressed with how quickly Shamrock has gotten to the point where he looks this impressive in the ring. He looks like a professional wrestler already, and he's done it really quickly. I know he dabbled with it before he got into UFC, but even still, he's looking like a high-performing wrestler now, and that's really impressive. Thankfully, we were able to get an ending to the match that wasn't a DQ or a complete schmoz ending or anything, but the second half definitely took a hit, but as far as matches we've seen tonight, this one was a solid one, I thought.
Yeah, you guys both made comments about each of these guys that I want to kind of echo, I guess. Bartlett, you're talking about Savio and how underutilized he is, and I agree. He's not this Boricua's stable, nobody cares about it, and Savio's just worthy of so much better. And it's just criminal what they're doing with him right now, wasting that talent and that ability. And Ryan, talking about Ken Shamrock, he's only been back, and when I say back, it had been several years before he was a wrestler, but 8 months, maybe 7-8 months. And first couple months were kind of shaky, but he is definitely way over. The crowd is enjoying him right now. And, they talk about guys who catch on quickly. It's always Kurt Angle is always one of the ones that people talk about, which rightfully so. But Ken Shamrock, he has really caught fire quickly, and the crowd is really into it.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if Dan the Beast Severn caught on quickly.
Or was that Butterbean?
A mixture.
Yeah. Well, they're the same person, really, in the end. All right. Let's go outside the arena. Stone Cold Steve Austin pulled up in a black Ford F-150 with Austin graphics of varying kinds all over it. Not the first time we're going to see an Austin custom pickup truck. That's going to be another one of those common sights that we'll get. Inside the arena, the Nation of Domination was coming to the ring, And quoting Jim Ross on commentary, the Nation was, quote, being led by The Rock, unquote. That's something that just instantly jumped out to me. We talked about it last week, I think, the way that this power dynamic is kind of just real subtly switching from Farouk to The Rock. Speaking of The Rock, he was in a Canadian tuxedo, and the rest of the Nation were in their black leather. Again, standing out against the rest of his group there. And business picked up, for me personally at least, when The Rock called Michael Cole a jabroni for the first time. I'm pretty sure that's the first time we're getting a jabroni from The Rock here, right?
As far as I know.
Yeah.
Yep.
But there was an audio issue with the microphone that The Rock was using, and eventually a video on the Titantron appeared with the word "Rocky sucks" repeating. That led a crowd chant, and the Nation really didn't think much of it. They didn't think that there was anything strange going on at that point. They kept going. But after the lights went out and came back on, Rocky dismissed the Nation. That's Farouk included, to go fix that problem. But the problem was Stone Cold Steve Austin in the production truck, and all of this was an elaborate ruse. Austin had a very entertaining video recorded there in the production truck. Suffice to say, this is the kind of storytelling that we need to get used to, and it's the kind of stuff that is going to propel the WWF through the Attitude Era, because this is money here. Austin in the fucking production truck abusing this old man, working some kind of switchboard or, you know, I don't know it. Austin clearly didn't know it, but that didn't stop him from going in there and taking charge, and I fucking loved it. But that video, that was a ruse. Austin ended up rushing the ring to attack The Rock, because remember, The Rock was there by himself. The Nation caught with their pants down. And a couple good licks were laid in, but ultimately The Rock ends up leaving with the Intercontinental title, furthering that story. Finally, guys, something in this episode that entertained the hell out of me, and it just kind of sucked because it also felt extremely short as well compared to some of the other, segments that we've got comparable to this one. Joe, what did you think of this?
The use of the word jabroni stood out for sure. And he also referred to himself as the People's Champion.
Mm-hmm. I missed that. Good call.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of that. I love that he's wearing the street clothes. He's got the fanny pack on. It's great.
With a beeper on it.
Yeah, and you're really on to something. They've got some really good shit here, because not only do they have The Rock in a feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin, but they've got this little underlying thing where Farouk is taking a back seat to The Rock right now. So, that's a future angle that they have in their back pocket. So that creative just has to be loving that. And The Rock looking at the beeper really quick and then getting the stunner is hilarious. And Austin saying, "Here's a little bird for you to enjoy right now," flipping him off. And this is the kind of shit that you see on those highlight tapes of, The Rock and Austin.
And this is one you see all the time. This is one of those iconic scenes.
Yeah. Well, one other thing is, we talked about it before, but The Rock's reactions to things are just...
Yes.
They're perfect.
Ryan, who was your favorite heel of all time? Your number one was Mr. McMahon, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Rock's reactions here, it's like straight out of the Mr. McMahon handbook. Mm-hmm. And Mr. McMahon doesn't even exist yet, really. So, he's just doing some great shit. And this angle is great. If not for the rise of The Rock right now, Austin could have maybe been in a little bit of trouble at this time without the Hart Foundation.
Yeah.
Brett and Owen are gone right now. So if not for the rise of The Rock, who knows what they would be doing with Austin right now.
Yeah.
I completely agree with both of you. This was really fantastic stuff here. We both mentioned about The Rock, kind of just sliding into the leadership role. We have him being the only one dressed differently here. I also, liked when the video started messing up and the lights were flickering. The Rock says, "Go fix this incompetence." And he just sends Farouk away to go fix it like he's a lackey. That was, like you said, Joe, future story building that they're just kind of keeping in the back pocket right now. And that's really clever. Then we go to Stone Cold in the control room, and this was great. Stone Cold cuts a fantastic promo about, it leads into the little bit later where he tells The Rock, if you ever look down at your beeper and see 316, your ass belongs to Stone Cold. That's great. And then even better is how he ends it. Great piece of foreshadowing and a little bit of a riddle to The Rock saying, with me learning all this technology, you have to ask, is this live or Memorex? And then boom, it was just Memorex. Stone Cold standing right behind The Rock. The beeper goes off. I mean, just fantastic storytelling. I absolutely fucking loved it. And then Stone Cold attacks The Rock, but Rocky is eventually able to sneak away with the belt. And then we end with Stone Cold saying, enjoy your Thanksgiving, and here's a little bird, flipping him off. And this time, not blurred. So I have to ask, I wonder if that really was Peacock, or is it just now we're in the second half of Raw, the War Zone, which is less censored, so now we're allowed to see it. So maybe we place that blame on the cock prematurely.
Yeah. So, first of all, agreed on everything. The thing that I am most interested in out of all of this, well, obviously I'm interested in Austin and The Rock, but so Rocky had said, go check on that. Everybody does, including Farouk. So now we have Farouk on camera taking orders, and I'm almost as interested in that as I am in The Rock and Stone Cold. How is these like slow, death by attrition, death of 1,000 cuts, insults to Farouk going to play into that conflict between Farouk and Rocky that we know we're going to have later on?
Especially when you know that Austin is your guy that's going to work up to WrestleMania with Shawn Michaels. What are we going to do with The Rock? Well, we are kind of already working on that, pal.
Yeah. And by the way, another great point that I think you made, Joe, what a fantastic thing to occupy Austin with while we continue to build up his popularity towards that championship. I mean, what better program to have him in to build him towards that? So everything's going right as far as The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin is concerned. What's in some ways not, and in some ways definitely going right is our next match. Crush defeats Jeff Jarrett by forfeit before it can even begin. So this was a strange one to me, and we were talking about this off air before we started recording. This was even a surprise to me, because in the research that I do for the podcast here, this was not listed. So this was kind of just me with fresh eyes on this. Crush came down to the ring alone, and I loved that. I didn't want to see the rest of them. Back in the locker room, though, Jeff Jarrett, he was refusing to come out to wrestle because apparently he didn't get the locker room guaranteed in his contract, that being, a big fancy deal with refrigerators and all kinds of creature comforts. Also because Jeff Jarrett thought that he was wrestling chains. He said the name Chains multiple times. Not a surprise. I mean, Chains and Crush, they look alike, and they're both so fucking lame, you can't tell them apart. But we're not going to hold that against Jeff. Bottom line here, though, is that Jeff isn't coming out, and I really kind of loved the whiny bitch persona here. I mentioned it, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago with our first installment of the Jeff Jarrett interview with JR. Jeff Jarrett just kind of has that natural, entitled, whiny persona to him that works really well, and this fit that. This was right on target for Jeff Jarrett for me. Crush, on the other hand, he's in the ring. What are you going to do with Crush? You're going to put the lights out. You're going to send in hellfire and brimstone. And Kane hit the ring, coming out to do God's work and send Crush straight to hell. Officials and the DOA came out to pull Crush's useless ass out of there, but not before Kane could also chokeslam Jerry Briscoe. So that was a very welcome addition to the melee there in the ring. And it more or less ended there. You know, I was conflicted here because on the one hand, I want to get Crush smeared by Kane. Like that's like almost a wet dream. Crush just getting smeared. But then on the other hand, Crush is on our screens. So, Joe, what did you think of Jeff Jarrett doing his thing here, but then also Kane's newest victim?
Well, Jeff Jarrett cutting this promo, I was so distracted by what he was wearing. He looked fucking ridiculous. I don't know.
Yes, he did.
I don't know what that was. Jerry Lawler called it a dress. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I was just too distracted by that I didn't care. Plus the fact that we thought he was going to be wrestling Chains or Crush or one of these idiots that I don't care about. But Kane coming in and destroying Crush was just absolutely beautiful. And Jerry Briscoe getting a chokeslam for his troubles was nice to see as well. So I did enjoy that.
Well, apparently Jeff Jarrett didn't get the conditions met, especially the well water. He didn't want any of that. Needed a fancy dressing room, but especially he didn't want to fight this grease monkey Chains. And I just absolutely love that he couldn't remember which worthless DOA member he was wrestling. And just fucking whatever, Chains, Crush, Nazi Fox, it doesn't matter. I'm going to start this with saying that Crush didn't get Jobber of the Week this week because if anyone out there remembers, I do have a Crush doesn't deserve to be Jobber of the Week policy. So that's why he didn't get the honors here, which is the whole point. He shouldn't be honored in any way. Mm-hmm. But the lights went out and oh yes, the music hit and I just loved seeing him get jobbed the fuck out, sent straight to Jobberville by Kane. That was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. And then just a little cherry on the top, Jerry Briscoe gets chokeslammed because he bumped into Kane. Loved it.
I'm pretty sure Crush will never be Jobber of the Week is carved into stone at the Hall of the Carpenters Union, is it not?
Well, into wood, but yes.
Yes. Thank you for that oversight on my part there. But, I mean, it's policy, like the man
policy.
said, so can't argue with that. Things moved pretty quickly onto our final match of the night. Shawn Michaels with Triple H, Chyna, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart defeat Vader by pinfall in 3 minutes. While Vader was coming out, JR said we had footage earlier in the episode of Goldust and his new main squeeze Luna.
Oh, did we, JR?
Yeah, we didn't. Spoiler alert. But they apparently poured some kind of booze into Vader's eye.
And you still have to have your match tonight, pal.
We definitely didn't get any of that earlier in the episode. That makes me think that this is probably recorded and we'll probably get it next week. That's just a guess. But Vader did show up in the ring here with a bandage over his left eye, so that tracks. Shawn came out and announced the Anvil's new membership in DX up at the entryway before coming down the ramp to meet Vader in the ring. And we immediately broke to commercial, missing the start of the match. Came back to some moderately decent action from Vader and Shawn Michaels. But then this match was quickly over with nothing real to note as far as what was going on within the match. And in what was probably predictable even back in 1997, DX turned on the Anvil. Holy shit, what a surprise. They kicked the hell out of him there in the ring, so that was good to see. But Shawn also spent some time yelling at the Anvil via the microphone and house PA system, which got zero energy from the crowd. And, I mean, really, to finish this out, Shawn just ended up repeating the phrase Degeneration X and insults until we faded to black. So I thought this was really a really lame-ass ending to what amounted to a really fucking lame-ass episode of Raw. And this feels kind of like an exception. You know, recently, we haven't had that many of these episodes that just sucked. We've had episodes that had a larger quantity of suckiness compared to greatness, and vice versa leading up to this. But again, my personal opinion, I thought this was a terrible episode of Raw. So Ryan, please, did you maybe have a better spin on this match and the way that Raw ended tonight?
Sadly, I don't think I can help you out much there because, we're ending it with Vader. And I hate that we always have to just shit talk Vader so much because, there was a time in Vader's career where he was good and he was entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
But we are well past that at this point in his career, and the whole segment really doesn't work. And to be honest with you, the thing I was most excited about was learning Luna is back in the WWF. That was like the biggest excitement from this entire segment. And yeah, the ending was the biggest Mr. Obvious moment that you could have, of course they were going to turn on the anvil, and they did. So, I mean, yeah, not very surprising at all. And really just kind of ended flat, in my opinion.
I am not as down on this episode as you are, Bartlett. I do agree with you that the main angle of the show is not good. But I think that there were pieces of the episode that were good. So I'm not down on the whole episode itself.
I'd agree with that, Joe. Yeah, I'm not quite where Bartlett is at, but it's not a fantastic Raw.
No, there's bits and pieces that were great, but there's a lot of bad too, and mainly because of this main angle that they're running here. I put here, LOL, remember when this match was a pay-per-view match about a year ago on SummerSlam? Vader versus Shawn Michaels. Mm-hmm. And then I just have that Jim Neidhart is a total sellout. He has zero pride, and I liked seeing him get the beating that he deserved.
Yeah, so I feel like I need to make my position clear here. There are certain things about this episode that I did enjoy, but they were very quickly canceled out by things that followed them. So like Harvey Whippleman, Downtown Bruno at the start. I thought that was great, but then I thought that Shawn's promo afterwards kind of canceled that out so that we were back to just baseline zero. Shamrock and Savio, the first half of that match was fantastic, but then the second half just kind of dwindled, so.
Well, and I think that's why I would go with Joe, and, this isn't a fantastic episode, but it's just middle of the road because, right. It's neutral, because you have really good things and really bad things. They kind of cancel each other out and make just a episode.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not quite as generous in that, but we'll talk about it here as we take it on over to highlights and lowlights. Ryan, please, why don't you take that first?
Well, for my highlight, honorable mention I'm going to give to Crush getting humiliated by Kane, but that's only a second tier highlight because my highlight has to go to the Rock and Stone Cold segment, the whole 316 beeper spot, just iconic moment, and it works still today. Everything about that was great. The low light for me is the Sergeant Slaughter spot. It just... I don't know. There was just a lot about it,
Yeah.
It killed any excitement I had for that pay-per-view match. So low light.
But there's going to be a murder.
Yeah.
On TV.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder if I'm going to see someone be killed with someone's bare hands on television.
My highlight is also the Stone Cold Steve Austin Rock segment. I thought everything about that was great. For my low light, I'm going with just Jim the Anvil Neidhart and the use of him in the main angle of this episode. I did not enjoy that.
Yeah. We're 3 for 3 on highlights. I went with Austin and The Rock, just in general, continuing their program This was great. The 316 on the beeper, fantastic storytelling. There's not much else to say about it. It's excellent, despite being one of the shorter segments in this show. And my lowlights, I had to go with the rest of the show. There were things, like I said, Harvey, that got canceled out. There were I'm not arguing with the fact that there were good things in this episode. There were very good things in this episode, but they were very quickly canceled out by some pretty damn shitty things, in my opinion. So
I knew that you were really upset about Crush getting destroyed. I knew it. That's what this is all about.
If anybody could best Kane, it would be Crush, the person that knows every single one of The Undertaker's moves and copies him relentlessly, right?
Brutta.
Yep.
Brutta. Right. So, like I said, there wasn't enough in here to keep me going. Joe, please, do you have any kind of contemporary news from on and around November 24th, 1997 for us?
I do, direct from the Wrestling Observer. Unfortunately, I don't have any news on LOD. You guys mentioned that earlier. Yeah. I think really the main reason for that is because, once again, we are obsessed with what happened in Montreal 3 weeks ago. So there's a lot of stuff in here again about the screw job. I tried to pull some things that were interesting. Dave Meltzer says, when you look up the term bait and switch in your dictionary, there should be a synonym to it, which is the World Wrestling Federation. And he is, of course, referring to tonight's episode. For all the kids out there that might be listening to this podcast, there were these things called newspapers back in the day that were pretty popular, and that's where everybody got their news. One of them being the USA Today. They listed the main event on this show as being Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. Oh. So people going to this show thought that match was actually going to happen.
And if it was the USA Today, I could only imagine there was some type of a pie chart underneath it.
Yeah, you got to have the visual. Yeah, and more screw job stuff. Bret Hart was scheduled to go on the TSN show Off the Record. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. That was a shoot interview show back in the 90s. It was a Canadian show, very similar to a lot of the shoot interviews that we see today on YouTube. So a little bit ahead of its time. But Bret canceled his appearance on that show because Vince McMahon booked himself to appear the next day on that show.
Did Vince show up?
No, Vince, once he found out that Bret canceled his appearance, then Vince canceled his appearance.
Perfect.
Bret Hart also had to cancel an AOL chat appearance on the advice of his lawyer because Bret is technically still under contract of the WWF until the end of the month, and the WWF has an exclusive deal with AOL.
Shawn Michaels let us know that earlier.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that Shawn Michaels was just bullshitting all of that. No, I'm serious. I really thought that he was just bullshitting all of that for the midget.
Do it for the midget.
Anything for the midgets.
Vince McMahon has supposedly taped yet another interview about Bret that will possibly air on Raw next week. So once again, will not let it go.
I am so over her.
Sympathy. On TV, the WWF portrayed Owen Hart as having severe mental strain due to the pressure of what happened with his brother. But in reality, Owen was on vacation with his family, and that's why he hasn't been on Raw. He has accepted the fact that he is under contract and is going to return, even if it's against his wishes. Owen's deal with the WWF is believed to be so one-sided that if the WWF were to terminate him, he cannot wrestle for any other wrestling promotion for 4 years.
Jeez.
So Owen must have signed a very strict non-compete clause in his contract. Davey Boy Smith, British Bulldog, he is expected to have knee surgery later this week. So once again, they were not lying about that, Bartlett.
Anvil's speaking the truth.
Yeah. Smith is also under contract with the WWF and is expected to return, even though he does not want to either. Jim Neidhart was not under a WWF contract and could leave at any time. Neidhart could have refused the angle and lost his job, but there are no guarantees that WCW would even want him.
No, there are guarantees, but just not in his favor.
Yeah. Really nice work there by Dave Meltzer. And here's some credit that I'd like to give Dave Meltzer, something that he said here. Eventually, this will turn into a pro wrestling angle where Owen Hart or British Bulldog return and wants revenge against Shawn Michaels and maybe Helmsley. Dave also says, it would not surprise me for McMahon to try and use the negative reaction to himself and do a heel turn himself. So pretty good prediction there.
Yeah.
And last bit of news here is that Bret Hart received a call from Harley Race, who told Bret that he was proud of how he handled everything in the situation, and particularly what he did in the dressing room afterwards by punching Vince McMahon. And that is all.
Wow. What a purely Harley Race thing to say. Wow.
I mean, of course, now we know, though, that Bret's lucky that Vince McMahon didn't fight back.
Yeah. And that news about Owen, kind of a little disturbing. I mean, that's almost like an offer you can't refuse or else.
If I remember correctly, I think it was like a 5-year deal that he signed like a year ago. So, yeah.
And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and tell all of your friends to tune in to the most disgraceful Monday Night Raw review podcast on the airwaves. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on December 1st, 1997, with matches featuring Chains, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.